If you drove your car today like it was just another normal day, you might already be behind. And that's not an exaggeration. As of today, the DMV rolled out 3 new rule changes that are already catching drivers off guard across the country. No loud announcement, no flashing warning signs, just quiet updates that could seriously affect how, where, and whether you're legally allowed to drive. And here's the wild part. A lot of people won't realize anything changed until they're pulled over, denied a renewal, or hit with a fine they didn't see coming. This isn't about reckless driving or doing something crazy. Some of these updates impact everyday stuff: paperwork, renewals, compliance rules, and how law enforcement looks at your vehicle on the road. If you think this only affects bad drivers, think again. These changes are catching regular, responsible drivers, people who pay their fees, renew on time, and follow the rules, completely off guard. And depending on your state, age, or driving status, one of these new rules might apply to you right now without you even realizing it. That's why you need to hear this before your next drive, your next renewal, or your next interaction with the DMV. Because once these rules are active, "I didn't know" won't cut it anymore. So do yourself a favor. Stay ahead of it, not scrambling after the fact. Hit the like button right now so this video reaches more drivers before they get caught slipping. Now let's slow this down for a second and actually talk about what's going on, because this isn't one of those situations where you can just shrug it off and say, "I'll deal with it later." The reason these DMV changes matter so much is because they don't hit everyone the same way, and they don't always show up with a warning. For a lot of drivers, the first sign something changed is when something suddenly doesn't work the way it used to. People assume the DMV only updates rules once in a blue moon. In reality, adjustments happen constantly. Some are federal, some are state level, and some are quiet procedural changes that never make the evening news. And when multiple updates land around the same time, it creates confusion fast. That's exactly what's happening right now. One of the biggest mistakes drivers make is assuming that if their license is valid and their registration looks fine, they're automatically good to go. That used to be a safe assumption. It's not anymore. Systems are more connected than ever. Databases talk to each other. Verification happens faster. And rules that used to be loosely enforced are now being checked in real time. That's why people are getting blindsided at renewal counters, during routine traffic stops, or even when trying to complete something simple online. Suddenly, a process that used to take 5 minutes turns into a problem that can't be fixed on the spot. And when that happens, it's not just annoying. It can mess with your schedule, your job, or your ability to legally drive at all. Another thing drivers don't realize is that the DMV doesn't operate on vibes or flexibility. It runs on compliance. If a rule changes and you don't meet the updated requirement, the system doesn't care that you weren't personally notified. It doesn't care that your situation hasn't changed. The rule is the rule, and once it's active, it's enforced. That's where a lot of frustration comes from. People feel like they're being punished for something they didn't do wrong. But from the DMV's perspective, it's not about right or wrong. It's about whether your information, documentation, or status matches the current standard. If it doesn't, the process stops right there. What makes this moment especially tricky is that many of these changes affect everyday drivers, not edge cases. We're talking about people who commute to work, drive their kids to school, run errands, or rely on their vehicle for basic independence. This isn't aimed at reckless drivers or people ignoring the law. It's hitting regular folks who thought they were already doing everything right. And let's talk about timing, because timing is a huge part of why people are getting caught off guard. A lot of drivers wait until the last minute to renew or update things, not because they're irresponsible, but because life gets busy. When rules shift right before or during peak renewal periods, it creates a perfect storm. People show up expecting the same process they've always known, only to find out the finish line moved. Online systems don't always explain what changed either. You might just see a denial, a request for additional verification, or a message telling you to contact the DMV directly. That's when the stress kicks in. Phone lines are backed up, appointments are booked out, and suddenly something simple becomes a multi-week headache. Another layer to this is enforcement. Law enforcement agencies get updated guidance when DMV rules change. That means what officers are checking for during stops can shift too. Something that might have been overlooked before could now trigger a warning, a citation, or a requirement to fix the issue within a certain time frame. And again, not knowing doesn't protect you from that outcome. Drivers also underestimate how much weight digital records now carry. Physical documents are still important, but electronic verification is often the first thing checked. If there's a mismatch, delay, or missing update in the system, it can override what you're carrying in your glove box. That's a reality a lot of people aren't prepared for. What really throws people off is when they hear different things from different sources. One friend says nothing changed. Another says it's a big deal. Social media posts exaggerate details or mix rules from different states. And before you know it, nobody knows what applies to them anymore. That confusion causes people to either panic or ignore the situation completely, and both reactions can lead to problems. The smart move right now isn't fear, it's awareness. Understanding that changes happened means you can adjust before they turn into consequences. It gives you a chance to double-check your status instead of finding out the hard way. And it puts you back in control, which is the part people feel like they're losing when systems change without a lot of noise. Another thing worth saying out loud is that these updates aren't designed to trick drivers. They're usually tied to broader goals like security, accuracy, safety, or standardization across systems. But just because there's a reason behind them doesn't mean the rollout feels smooth on the ground. The gap between policy and real life is where frustration lives. That's why staying informed matters more now than it did years ago. Not in a paranoid way, but in a practical one. Knowing that rules can change and checking in once in a while saves you time, money, and stress. It's way easier to adjust early than to fix something after it's already flagged. If you're thinking this probably doesn't apply to you because you haven't had issues before, that's exactly how most people feel right up until the moment they do. The drivers who get hit the hardest are usually the ones who least expected it. They assumed everything was fine because it always had been. And that's really the point of this video. Not to scare you, not to overhype anything, but to cut through the noise and say, hey, pay attention right now. A little awareness today can prevent a big problem tomorrow. These aren't theoretical changes. They're active, they're being enforced, and they're already affecting real drivers. If you're watching this and thinking, I should probably look into my own situation, that's the right instinct. Take it seriously before the system forces you to. Because once you're stuck reacting, everything takes longer and costs more. The biggest mistake drivers make in moments like this is assuming silence means safety. Just because you haven't gotten a letter, an email, or a warning doesn't mean everything is locked in the way it used to be. A lot of these systems update quietly in the background, and by the time something surfaces on your end, the change has already been live for a while. That delay is where most people get burned. Another thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how different states interpret and apply updates at different speeds. One state might enforce a change immediately, while another eases into it over weeks or months. That inconsistency makes people think the rules aren't real or that they don't matter yet. Then they cross a county line, move, or renew under a different office, and suddenly the rule feels very real, very fast. And let's be honest, the DMV isn't exactly known for crystal clear communication. Most updates are written in technical language, buried in official notices, or explained in ways that don't feel relatable to everyday drivers. People skim, misunderstand, or tune it out entirely. That's not because they don't care, but because the system isn't built with attention spans in mind. This is why so many drivers feel blindsided instead of informed. They're not ignoring the rules. They just never had the rules explained in plain English. And when you're juggling work, family, bills, and everything else life throws at you, decoding DMV language isn't exactly high on the priority list. But the reality is, driving is one of those things we all depend on until the moment we can't. Losing access, even temporarily, creates a domino effect. Missed work, canceled plans, unexpected expenses, stress that snowballs fast. That's why staying one step ahead matters more than ever. What's also changed over the years is how little grace there is once something is flagged. In the past, there was often room to explain, correct, or fix issues on the spot. Now many systems are automated. If the system says no, the answer is no until the issue is resolved through the proper process. And that process almost always takes time. That's where people feel powerless, like the rug got pulled out from under them. But the truth is, the power shifts back to you when you know what to watch for and when to act. Awareness isn't about obsessing over every rule change. It's about understanding that the landscape isn't static anymore. Another thing drivers underestimate is how quickly outdated information spreads. Someone shares advice that was true last year, and it gets passed around like it's still valid today. People trust it because it sounds familiar, but familiarity doesn't equal accuracy. And when rules evolve, old advice can become bad advice overnight. This is especially risky when it comes to renewals, documentation, and compliance requirements. One wrong assumption can delay approvals or trigger issues that didn't exist before. And once you're in that loop, getting back out isn't always simple. The smartest drivers right now aren't panicking. They're checking, they're verifying, they're making sure their information lines up with current standards, not past ones. That mindset alone puts you ahead of the curve. It's also worth remembering that these systems don't personalize enforcement. They don't look at intent. They don't consider how long you've been driving or how clean your record is. They look at data. If the data doesn't match the rule, the outcome is the same for everyone. That can feel cold, but it also means the rules are predictable once you understand them. There's no guessing game. There's just alignment or misalignment. And alignment is something you can control. Right now, a lot of drivers are finding out the hard way because they assumed nothing had changed. This video exists so you don't have to be one of them. Paying attention today beats scrambling tomorrow. Every single time. The bottom line is simple. Driving rules don't just change on the road anymore. They change in databases, systems, and policies that most people never see until it's too late. Staying informed isn't about fear. It's about staying mobile, independent, and in control of your own schedule. So take this moment seriously, not with stress, not with panic, but with awareness. Because when you know what's happening, you're not caught off guard. You're prepared. And in today's driving environment, preparation makes all the difference. Stay ahead of the changes now, because once the system flags you, catching up is a whole lot harder than staying prepared.